My brother snapped and said I was always the problem. Mom said things were better before I returned. So I walked away, claimed what was rightfully mine, found freedom, and woke up to 17 missed calls. I, 32 male, woke up in the dim morning light of my motel room, staring at my phone screen as 17 missed calls stared back at me like accusations I couldn't escape. 12 from my mother, 3 from my brother, and 2 from my sister-in-law. 17 missed calls. 17 messages that had accumulated while I slept, each one a reminder of the family that had spent years making me feel invisible, unworthy, and always at fault. I didn't answer. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of every word my brother had spoken yesterday, every judgment my mother had cast, every tiny criticism that had built up over the years, finally boiling over into the confrontation that shattered me and forced me to leave. My brother snapped, his face red, fingers clenched, eyes burning with anger, pointing at me across the kitchen table as his voice rose sharply, each word hitting me like a whip. "You've always been the issue." The words cut deep, but my mother stood behind him, arms crossed, chin lifted, delivering her own cold sentence with precision. "Things were better before you returned." I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself or point out all the times I had paid rent, helped with groceries, taken care of Mom when she broke her hip, or done more than my share of housework. I simply grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving behind the house that had felt like a cage, the family that had made me feel like a burden, and the life I thought I belonged to. 24 hours ago, I had believed in family, believed that blood meant something beyond duty and obligation, believed that forgiveness was enough to heal old wounds. I had crawled back home after my divorce, tail between my legs, hoping to rebuild the bridge I thought existed between me and them, offering help with rent, groceries, laundry, and household chores, doing everything I could to make myself useful, appreciated, and accepted. But every snide comment from my brother about me freeloading, every passive-aggressive remark from Mom about how life was easier when it was just the three of them, every tiny judgment I had ignored for years, exploded all at once over something stupid. I had used the last of the coffee creamer. My brother had erupted, comparing me to Dad, accusing me of taking without asking, telling me I was a burden, that I was the problem. And my mother, instead of calming the storm, crossed her arms and delivered the sentence that broke my last thread of patience. "Things were better before you returned." I didn't fight, didn't shout, didn't cry. I just picked up my keys, left the house behind, and stepped into a world where I could finally breathe without fear, think without guilt, and plan for myself without being torn down at every step. The motel room I checked into was barely comfortable, but it was mine. No criticism, no expectations, no walking on eggshells, no feeling like my every move was judged or calculated against some imaginary standard. I sat on the bed, thinking, planning, remembering all the things I had pushed aside for years, the moments I had ignored to keep the family peace, the sacrifices I had made that had gone unnoticed, unappreciated, and unrewarded. My phone buzzed again. A text from my sister-in-law appeared. "Please call back. Your mom is worried sick. We need to talk." I almost laughed. Worried sick? Where was that concern when they were systematically breaking me down? When every word they spoke made me feel like I was taking food from their mouths? When they made it clear I was nothing more than an inconvenience in their perfect little world? But their panic gave me an idea. A terrible and satisfying idea. Update 1. The missed calls stopped, replaced by increasingly frantic text messages. My brother's tone shifted from demanding to pleading. Mom was apparently beside herself. They had even called my ex-wife asking if she'd heard from me. Perfect. I spent the morning at the bank. Turns out, when you help your elderly mother manage her finances for 2 years, you end up on quite a few accounts. Joint signatory privileges she'd insisted on when her arthritis made writing checks difficult. Access I had never abused, never even thought about until now. I didn't clean out the accounts. I wasn't a thief. But I did withdraw my portion of several investments we had made together. Money I'd contributed when Mom struggled with property taxes. Funds I'd added to her emergency account during my better financial days. Technically and legally mine. Next stop, the storage unit. Mom had asked me to help clean out Dad's belongings after he passed 3 years ago. We had preserved everything for sentimental reasons, she said. But buried within those boxes were important documents, papers that revealed the truth she had hidden. Birth certificates, insurance policies, and most crucially, Dad's original will. The will that left me the old cabin upstate, the cabin Mom claimed had been sold years ago to pay medical bills, when in reality she had been collecting rental income from it for 3 years, hiding the truth from my brother and from me. I had discovered it by accident 6 months ago, but had stayed silent in the name of harmony. Harmony, I realized, was a two-way street, and I'd been the only one traveling it. The cabin, though neglected, was mine, free and clear, and for the first time, I felt a sense of anticipation that borderlined on exhilaration. My phone rang again. Mom's number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her tearful message, her voice shaking, choked with emotion, apologizing, begging me to come back, promising that they had overreacted, that they needed to explain everything, that I couldn't possibly understand until I returned. Too late for explanations, I thought. Too late for justifications. Too late for their carefully crafted stories that had made me feel small and inadequate for years. I sat in that room, letting the silence surround me, letting the realization sink in that for the first time in decades, I was free to make decisions without their interference, to breathe without their judgment, to think without fear of criticism or condemnation. Update 2. Monday morning arrived with the storm I had been expecting. My brother called at 6 a.m., screaming about the bank withdrawals, threatening to call the police, his voice rising, his words sharp and furious, a mixture of fear and anger that I had never heard from him before. I sat calmly, letting him vent, and explained that I had only taken what was legally mine, suggesting that he review the account records carefully, that every withdrawal was documented, justified, and rightfully belonged to me. The silence that followed after my explanation was beautiful, satisfying, a long-awaited moment where power shifted, where the tables finally turned in my favor. Mom called an hour later. Her voice was shaky, tearful, confused. She wanted to know how I had disappeared so completely, how I had gained access to money she had never thought I'd touch. I told her about the cabin, about Dad's will, about the rental income she had hidden from everyone, including my brother. For the first time in years, my mother was speechless. The lawyer I consulted, Dad's old friend who drafted the original will, was intrigued by the information I shared. It turned out that hiding inherited property and collecting rental income under false pretenses had serious legal implications. Who knew? I wasn't interested in destroying my family despite everything. I just wanted what was mine and recognition of their deceit. My brother showed up at the cabin on Tuesday evening. He looked worn, unshaven, eyes red, clothes wrinkled, the physical manifestation of guilt, fear, and exhaustion. He had driven 3 hours to confront me, probably expecting the same doormat he had walked over for months. He started with anger, demanding I return the money, accusing me of theft and manipulation. I let him rant for 10 minutes, let him unload years of frustration and concealed resentment, before handing him a copy of Dad's will and the rental income records I had discovered. Watching his face shift from rage to confusion to horror was almost worth the years of abuse, worth the endless moments I had felt like nothing to them. He tried to justify their actions, claiming Mom didn't know what she was doing, that they needed the money, that they had planned to tell me eventually. I asked one simple question. If they were so desperate for money, why had they spent the last 6 months telling me I was a burden? Why make me feel like I was taking food from their mouths when they were profiting from property that belonged to me? He had no answer. Update 3. The family meeting happened Thursday, the same kitchen table where they had made it clear I was unwanted just a week ago. Mom, my brother, his wife, and I sat around it, the atmosphere suffocating, heavy with tension and past grievances. Mom looked older, frail, her hands wringing together nervously, eyes flicking to me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe I had been a stranger to them longer than I realized. My brother had prepared a speech. He apologized for his words, claimed work stress had made him say things he didn't mean. His wife nodded, offering support while I could see the calculation behind her eyes. They weren't sorry for hurting me. They were sorry they had been caught. Mom's apology was slightly more genuine, admitting she had hidden the cabin and rental income, claimed she was protecting me from burdens I had a right to know. I let them speak, let them offer excuses, justifications, and half-truths. When they finished, I laid out my terms. First, full control of the cabin would be transferred to me, no strings attached. Second, they would pay me the 3 years of rental income they had hidden, minus reasonable documented maintenance costs. Third, they would publicly acknowledge to the extended family that I had not been a freeloader, that I had contributed to the household, and that their story of my inadequacy had been false. My brother turned red, attempting to argue, to justify, to claim that family should forgive and forget. I stood up, signaling the end of that conversation. Mom broke down completely, begging me to stay, to work things out, to not abandon the family. She admitted they had treated me horribly, that their financial stress had been projected onto me, that they had been wrong in every way. But I knew apologies meant little after years of manipulation. I told them I'd think about it and left. Final update. 2 weeks later, I am still at the cabin. The rental income plus savings gives me enough to renovate properly, to make the place livable, comfortable, and fully mine. My brother transferred back the rental payments they owed, Mom signed over the deed, and public acknowledgement happened at Sunday dinner with my aunt and uncle, the same people who had once believed I was a deadbeat. But the most satisfying moment was not the money, not even the vindication. It was the phone call from my ex-wife, who had been contacted by my family during their panic, told their version of events, and expected to find me broken. Instead, she found me calm, settled, free from the people who had poisoned my life for years. We spoke for 2 hours, honestly, truly. She admitted she had been unaware of how systematically they had undermined me. Maybe we can be friends. Maybe not. But it will be real without their poison in the background. Now, Mom calls every few days.
Awkward, tentative conversation.
She wants forgiveness, wants normalcy. But there is no normal anymore. My brother hasn't called. His wife sends occasional texts asking about gatherings as if nothing happened. I don't respond. The cabin is quiet, peaceful. A place I didn't know existed in my life until I took control. I wake up and see my phone. No missed calls, no panic, no judgment. No demands that I apologize for existing. I pour my coffee, step onto the porch Dad built 30 years ago, look at the endless forest and sky, and feel finally, completely free. And in that silence, I remember the 17 missed calls from the morning I left, realizing they were not about me. They were about themselves, about losing their convenient scapegoat, about the collapse of their perfect little unit. They were right about one thing. Things were better before I returned. For them. But for me, life has just begun.